Hey, there we are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be where you are out there. Welcome back to Microsoft Build 2021. This is an Ask the Experts session, and we're going to be talking about the future of modern application development with .NET. My name is Jeff Fritz, and I've got a whole panel here to answer your questions and talk about modern application, to talk about .NET, .NET 6, the next version of C#, .NET MAUI, Blazor, all the cool things with ASP.NET, .NET workbooks. It's going to be a very good session. I hope you stick around for the whole thing. I've got a handful of slides here that we're going to take a look at before we get started, before I bring on the panel. So let me just go through and make sure that you know. Here's a list of our speakers. I've got Daniel Roth, David Orton now, Dimitri Lealin, Mads Torgerson, Maria Nagaga, Scott Hunter, and Stefan Halter, all here to answer your questions, to talk about things. I already see some questions flowing into the Q&A. Keep it up out there. These folks will be answering your questions there. Vote up the ones you like, and I'll be sure that we get to those in person with some of our panelists. So make sure you know, use chat to ask questions. Those questions will appear to all attendees once they're approved by our moderator. We've got a crack moderator staff here. They're not going to take no for an answer. They're not going to take any willy-nilly here, and we're going to have a very good time, thanks to our moderators. And our experts will answer questions appropriately. So please, this session may be recorded. Please help our moderators by not spamming or posting inappropriate comments in the chat, and adhere to the code of conduct. There is a code of conduct. It's listed here, and if you take a look at the Q&A, it's the first message that you'll see in that queue there, if you scroll all the way to the top. All right, now I mentioned our panelists. My name is Jeff Fritz. I'm a program manager focused on community and live events like this one. Daniel Roth is here. He's a principal program manager working on ASP.NET and Blazor. David Orton now is here. He works on .NET MAUI. He's a principal program manager as well. Dimitri Lealin is here. He's a senior program manager for .NET MAUI, and he's working on the hot reload tools that we've been hearing so much about. Mads Torgerson is here. Of course, he's the C# language designer. All things C# go through our friend Mads. Maria Nagaga is the senior PM on ASP.NET. Stefan Halter is the senior software engineer on ASP.NET. And our friend Scott Hunter is here. He's the director of program management for .NET. We like to call him the boss. All right. Thank you so much, panel. It's so good to see you. I want to start with Scott. And we've heard so much about .NET 6 is coming up. We saw .NET 6 Preview 4 released here as part of Microsoft Build. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of buzz. We had how many questions? 18, 20 questions published even before we got started here. What can you say about .NET 6 coming up and that November release? Are we on schedule? Are we seeing the things that we wanted to see as part of this? What are you looking forward to as part of .NET 6?
Well, first off, part of the fun of Build for us is putting together the demos that we show in like the .NET session. And when we put those demos together, I got the first chance of seeing MAUI and Blazor Desktop and minimal APIs and some of the C# 10 features all coming together to make the platform really shine. And so it kind of got me excited because until now, we really haven't been able to make all that stuff work together. And so I'm super excited about it. But really, the overall theme for me is the unification of the platform. We started this journey with .NET 5, and with .NET 6, now we brought in MAUI, which is an evolution of Xamarin. And we've added Blazor to MAUI as well, so you can do either web or native controls. And to me, that's the end of our unification model of .NET, where we're going to have a single SDK that lets you build all your project types. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I'm excited about. Well, I take it back. Hot reload. If you've not seen any of the hot reload demos, it just changes the way that .NET works. And it's based on some new tech and some tech called edit and continue that we've had in the past. And I look forward to seeing how we can take that forward in the future and allow you to make bigger and bigger changes and change them on the fly.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, I'm I'm really excited about seeing where we go with .NET MAUI and the updates for Blazor. My goodness, so many good things coming as part of Blazor. But I see a couple of comments here asking questions about MAUI. Can we bring in David Orton now for a second? David, I see questions ranging from the very basic, well, what is .NET MAUI, to what does .NET MAUI mean for Xamarin? Can you chime in a little bit there and give the MAUI 101, if you will?
Sure, absolutely. So .NET MAUI is a cross-platform, multi-platforms in the name, multi-platform app UI for building native applications. So in many cases, it's really important, if not advantageous, to be native on Android, iOS, Mac OS, Windows, which are the platforms that we're targeting. And so you get all of the accessibility, all of the security, all the controls that are available to you, but you only need to write one UI and it will run natively everywhere. You get to choose whether it's going to be platform specific or consistent. The important bit is that you get the best user experience for your users because it is native to the culture of that platform. An Android user, an iOS user expect certain different things in different situations. So that's one of the main reasons that we go hard on, let's make sure that it's platform native for all those reasons: consistency, experience, performance, all that sort of thing. Now you can use Skia Sharp and other drawing libraries to go more custom to your specific needs. And we have a rich library, or ecosystem, I should say, of libraries for other components, controls, charting, as well as any custom UI that you might need. Now for Xamarin, the good news is that we're taking everything we've learned over the past 7 years of Xamarin Forms, as well as the additional years before that of Xamarin, Android and iOS, Mac OS, even going back to MonoTouch and Mono Android, we've learned a lot, right? And we've kind of traversed several different evolutions of those different platforms. You know, Windows has gone several versions since we started. Android, iOS, you can count every year a new version has come out, and sometimes big UI design changes. So we've learned a lot about what it takes to make a cross-platform library that's effective and efficient for development, as well as for maintaining it out there in the professional, workforce. So your projects, if you have a Xamarin project or a Xamarin.Forms project, will migrate directly into .NET 6. There will be a couple of tweaks to some UI things, but your projects are going to run, and you'll be able to take advantage of .NET MAUI features as and when you wish, and they make the most sense for your application. So we very much have in mind the compatibility story, making sure that you're not doing a rewrite, you're bringing everything forward. It's an add-on for you.
Very cool. Oh, man. Now, for folks who have already been building with UWP, I'm going to go to John's question here that I see voted up. Just to follow up with you, David, for folks that have been working in UWP, how hard will it be to port from UWP to .NET MAUI, or from WinUI Desktop to MAUI?
Yeah, so I mean, if you want to be able to take that type of project cross-platform with .NET MAUI, it's a pretty straightforward transition or translation of your XAML controls. So you can still use XAML in .NET MAUI. Our controls are named slightly differently. So you'll find in some cases where you would be using a stack panel in UWP or WinUI, it's now called a stack layout in Xamarin. I almost said Xamarin Forms in .NET MAUI, right? So, we've talked to a lot of developers who've done exactly that transition, and what they've told us is, yeah, it's a little bit of a brain bender initially, but you get over that within a couple hours or a day, and you're off and running with the new names that you need to be able to use, because we again are doing native things on each of those 4 platforms we target. So all of your other code, your business logic, your middle layer, all the non-UI stuff, that stuff just works because it's all .NET, right? So you don't need to rewrite any of that stuff. That stuff just works. So a little bit of tweak to your naming. We have compiled bindings, we have relative bindings, we have multi-bindings, we have all of that stuff in .NET MAUI, and just a slight tweak to the syntax, and you're good to go. So if you're bringing actual code over, then that's your kind of the migration points. If you're just looking to reuse some of the knowledge and things like that you have, it's a very consistent experience, and you'll hit the ground running.
Fantastic. Now, one of the other big things that we saw was released and has been made available to folks today is Hot Reload. There's updates to the Hot Reload experience. And I want to make sure that we bring in Dimitri Leal in here. There's a good question about Hot Reload. And gosh, Dimitri, you and I had a great conversation about 2 weeks ago about Hot Reload and some of the things that it's supported in and where it's going. And the question here from Larry is, I love the idea of the new Hot Reload, but in a conventional C#.NET development environment, are there any configurations where Hot Reload is not supported? And my gosh, I think you're set up really well with this product. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, glad to do it. So today there are limitations. Not every kind of edit is possible. So let me kind of break that up into two buckets. There's a bucket of things that are more about like changes to your project. So today you won't be able to add a new code file while your app is running. You won't be able to manage your NuGet packages. So there is some limitations there. We're certainly listening for feedback from customers and sort of what's important to them. But at this stage of it, we're focused on making the code changes possible, not kind of structural changes possible. So for the code that is in your app, you should be able to change quite a bit of it. We have some limitations that are sort of inherent in what edit and continue used to be able to support. And some of that has been carried forward into Hot Reload. So an example that wasn't supported before, you weren't able to change a using statement. You weren't able to add it or modify it. So that's something we fixed as part of Hot Reload. And we're looking at fixing more and more of these kind of unsupported scenarios and making them supported over time. So right now, certain edits will cause a restart, but there's quite a few edits that won't. And we hope that that adds a lot to kind of customer productivity.
Yeah, there's so much to be excited about there. Just testing and using .NET Watch with Hot Reload and being able to build a good chunk of an ASP.NET site and see it auto save inside of Visual Studio Code and automatically update with some of these things. Really, really cool to see. I'm excited to see how that evolves, especially when we get into Visual Studio 2022. Really cool stuff there. Let me go over to Mads next. I see a question here about C# features, particularly, Mads, there's a question here from Alexander asking about, I'm sorry, the thing moved on me. There's a question from an anonymous participant here asking about generics features in C# going forward. Do we see any expectation of new features coming there?
Yeah, we are actually we're prototyping a feature right now. It's not going to make it into C#10 and .NET 6, but we are targeting making it actually available as a preview feature in that time frame, where we will allow interfaces to specify abstract static members, including operators, and then classes that implement those interfaces, classes or structs, have to then define static members that satisfy those requirements. And what you can use that for is that you can now use these interfaces as a generic constraint. This is where generics comes into it. And then inside of that generic code, those static members, including operators, will be available on your T's, on your type parameters. And that a really big scenario for that, though not the only one, is to be able to specify mathematical concepts as interfaces. So a thing that has a plus and a minus and maybe a zero static property and that kind of stuff. All math is static members in .NET, and being able to abstract over that with generics is a big thing that I think will move generics quite a bit forward in expressiveness, and in particular will help make numerics like general math much more first class in .NET than it is today.
Awesome. And I want to make sure I touch on Mike's question here that you've already answered in chat, but I think this is a good discussion. It's a feature that I've really started digging into more recently in my code. Are there any continuing efforts in the area of C#'s nullable checking? For example, I see there's a new required variable attribute. Will nullable checks understand this? How about Nullable working with Entity Framework Core?
Yeah, so the entity question I'll leave to someone who's more up on that. But in terms of required properties, it's in many ways a feature that's motivated by Nullable, if you will, and it works very well together with it. And the reason is we've done a lot recently to expand the use of object initializers to initialize new objects instead of requiring people to write constructors everywhere. But one of the big problems is if you have reference type, if you have members of reference type that are non-nullable, you can't trust that people calling an object initializer will initialize those. We can't force people to initialize any given member in an object initializer. And so the nullable analysis thinks they might not be initialized and they will still be null, even though they're supposed to be non-nullable. And we'll warn about that today. So we'll allow you to mark properties as required, which means an object initializer has to contain them and has to initialize them. And then that shuts up the nullable analysis and makes it know which things it can expect to be initialized. So that is sort of the next big step on the nullable analysis. And then there's like a cute little feature, which is going to save many, many lines of code, which is that you get to put a bang bang on your parameters. And if you do, then that means automatically generate a null check and throw an argument null exception if the incoming thing was null. So where people usually, if they want to do the null check on incoming, they have to write several lines just to handle the fact that something might be null, despite your nullable annotations. This will now just be a few characters in the signature of the method. Those are a few null-related things.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I've definitely started my journey towards marking things as nullable and turning on the nullable checks in my code. And my gosh, it's getting me rethinking the way that I write code, Mads. It really is.
I hope in a good way.
Exactly. I know it's for my own good.
The general philosophy is for it when you turn it on, you start asking yourself questions that you probably should have been asking yourself, but didn't have a way to be reminded systematically of. Like, hey, actually, is this intended to be null or not? I never thought about it when I wrote the API, and I just left it to my customers to fail, try and fail. Now I can be explicit about it, and it makes me think about it at the time I write the API. That's the core purpose. I'm glad it's working for you at least.
Yeah, absolutely. The earlier we can catch those types of mistakes, the better, the cheaper, and the less chance of mistakes in production code. I have a question here from an anonymous viewer asking, when and where can we get access to Dan Roth's Blazor desktop weather app, the sample code from the deep dive presentation?
Soon. I still need to finish the little bit of cleanup on it. Yeah, I apologize.
What's taking so long, Dan? What's going on there, man?
I know. Today, like later today, I will get that code published. If you go digging around in my GitHub account, you can probably find it in some branch someplace, but it needs a little bit of updating to the official preview 4 build, and then I'll make that available along with the .NET MAUI version that David's already published.
That is a really cool looking app. Thank you. I'm going to go to a question here from Sebastian, and I think Stefan's going to be able to help us with this one. Sebastian says serialization is key in REST API backend services and web apps in general. Looking at system text JSON serialization, what is the vision for this namespace? Do you envision parity with JSON.NET, the Newtonsoft package? So far, we're missing some key features before being able to switch to this namespace. Can you help us out with that?
Yeah. So the vision is world domination. I joke. I work with James Newton King, and JSON.NET is great, but system text JSON is getting a ton of new features all the time. Parity isn't an explicit goal, but if there's a feature that you really need to migrate, by all means, file issues in the runtime repo on GitHub, upload it. We're doing a lot of interesting things that aren't supported by Newtonsoft, such as Roslyn source generators for better AOT support with JSON serialization. So again, parity is not a goal, but we want it to be the best option. And there's a lot of active development in that namespace.
Very cool. All right. I like hearing that because I'm always faced with that question as I'm building my APIs. Which one of these am I using? And when I'm using system text JSON, I know I have to configure a couple extra settings in there so I get it to behave with case insensitivity and stuff like that. I have a question here from Mato, it looks like. And I think Maria might be able to help us with this. Can you talk a bit more about performance and other improvements we expect in web APIs with .NET 6? Maria, I know the minimum API structure, that was something that your team worked a lot on. Can you talk a little bit about performance and some of those improvements?
Yeah, so with minimal APIs right now, if you looked at our blog post, minimal APIs is faster. However, we have to account for what kind of scenarios minimal APIs are built for. Like one of the questions I see popping up quite a bit is, how do I take my MVC, like my web API, MVC API, and make it into a minimal API? That might not be the best transition. We don't want you to move backwards because you might have these APIs that cover a huge surface. But if you're thinking about building more lightweight APIs or smaller microservices and it's fast, minimal APIs is the way for you to go. And I believe you, like Stefan, correct me on the numbers, but I think minimal APIs is 800K per second right now. Yes.
Yeah, so that's the JSON Tech and Power benchmark.
Yeah.
Which is a very micro benchmark, but yeah, it's a lot better. So, and then it's 500K for the same benchmark if you're using an MVC controller, which is still very fast, you know, given the hardware we're on. And that's RPS numbers.
Cool. Okay. I like hearing that it's nice and fast, and I feel like Maria, we can take our NuGet packages or our projects that have all of our business logic built for our front end applications, for whether it's our web or a Blazor application, and we can really stand up that microservice front end to connect into that same library and reuse and end up with this big performance improvement instead of trying to shuffle things around and kind of have that very large ASP.NET project that has all the things running in it.
Yeah, exactly. And you can also see minimal APIs as a great getting started on-ramp into .NET, right? And as ASP.NET application specifically. If you are a student or you're someone building their very first web application and you want to try ASP.NET a go, I think minimal APIs is your perfect entryway into the ASP.NET ecosystem.
Oh, yeah. Very cool. Thank you, Maria. Appreciate you chiming in on that. Now, I do see a question here that I'm not sure if Dan or David's going to be able to help out with. And I feel like it touches around this idea of the Blazor MAUI application. And it's from Mehran, asks, how does .NET MAUI, how's that related to Blazor mobile bindings? Dan, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So Blazor Mobile Bindings was a open source experimental project that we started, I don't know, probably about a year ago now. It was based on Xamarin Forms, and the idea was to try out building hybrid apps using Blazor for rendering web UI inside of a native application, which was a Xamarin Forms host. The learnings from the mobile Blazor bindings is what informs what we're doing with .NET MAUI. .NET MAUI is the evolution of Xamarin Forms, expanded to support more platforms with a updated architecture. And we're just taking the learnings that we did with the mobile Blazor bindings by creating a Blazor web view and moving that into .NET MAUI. So that was sort of the predecessor of the work we're doing with .NET MAUI Blazor apps.
Yeah, I'll add real quick that in the mobile Blazor bindings project, you get essentially a Razor syntax on top of the Xamarin Forms controls. So you're not doing divs and labels and things like that as much as you're doing Xamarin Forms elements expressed in a Razor syntax. So yeah, one of the things we did learn, as Dan mentioned, is we sat down, did studies with customers, watched developers actually use the product to try to build something. And some of the clear feedback was, hey, we have web skills, let us reuse our web skills. And so that's how we've arrived at the first iteration of something that seems very useful, which is this beautiful Blazor web view. And it's magical once you experience it and you realize just how seamless your experience is between the Blazor bits and the MAUI bits. They're all the same bits because they're all .NET. I've asked Alon and Steve Sanderson several times, no, explain this to me. And they keep telling me, you're making it harder than it seems. It's all the same stuff.
All right. I like hearing that because I've got one or two Blazor applications floating around that you're telling me, guys, that I'm going to be able to move that into .NET MAUI pretty easy. So I am looking forward to giving that a spin, let me tell you. I have a migration question here that I think I'm going to ask Scott Hunter about. This is a question, Scott, from JVI, asking, will .NET 6 allow us to import .NET Framework NuGet packages? Specifically, they mentioned 4.7, but I think 4.8 kind of fits into this question as well. But am I going to be able to import those packages, or do I need to upgrade them to .NET Standard or .NET 5 and later first?
And so the answer to that would be if you have existing .NET Framework packages, and this was a demo we did a long time ago, was when we were first doing .NET Core at the time, which became .NET 5 and 6. As long as the APIs that package depends on exists in .NET 5 or .NET 6, those packages will run on the platform just like they have before. They don't have to be recompiled. And so at one point we used to show a zip library that was compiled like in 2010. And it worked fine in a .NET 3.1 application at the time. And we have tools that you can actually run against those libraries as well to see if they use APIs that are not supported as well.
There you go. All right. I like hearing that. So do you mind, Scott, do you mind if I'm going to answer a question here from an anonymous, I keep saying wanting to say attendee, but viewer, I guess. I think I can handle this one. And it's a question about Azure Durable Functions and how there's a version of Azure Durable Functions out there that only support .NET Framework 4 and locks them into C#8. When .NET 6 comes out, can they run Azure Functions in Azure Durable Functions? Really disappointed you weren't able to upgrade to C#9 and .NET 5. So check this out. For anonymous viewer out there, let me let you know, .NET 5 will run with an out-of-process runner in Azure Functions 3 runtime. This is something that we've done on live streams. It works great. Take a look at the latest runtime for Azure Functions, and I think you're going to find that you are going to be able to get your code running with .NET 5 on Azure Functions. And Scott, I do believe the Azure folks, they are committing to having runtime for .NET 6 on day one.
Right. So there's two flavors of Azure Functions for folks that don't know. There's a flavor where it runs in proc, and there's a flavor that runs out of proc. The one that runs in proc gives especially a .NET developer, a bunch of additional capabilities. There's some rich bindings that exist in the in proc version. And as Jeff said, you can actually run today, .NET 5 will run out of proc on Azure Functions today if you really want to do that. But our goal is with .NET 6 to have it available on both in proc and out of proc at launch in November.
So speaking of November, let me make sure we go to this slide, and I'm going to ask if we can put the slide up. .NET Conf, make sure you write this down. Put it in your diary, in your journal right now. You want to be here with us, November 9 to 11. It's the .NET 6 launch. All the things that you've seen in preview today are going to be final. They're going to be available to you, released to the web, released to many, right? That's what RTM is now. November 9 to 11. It's a free event, virtual event, as always. Save the date. Check it out at .NETconf.net. We're really looking forward to that as we come into the final minute here. My goodness, thank you so much. I think we got everybody in the panel answering a question. There's an anonymous question here. Where did Jeff get that Blazor hat? And Dan chimed in with glue and purple glitter. Actually, there's a swag repository you can find on the .NET Foundation organization out on GitHub. A lot of the logos are available there if you want to make stickers, you want to make hats. We just ask that you don't sell them. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, panel. Really appreciate you taking time there. Look at that. Scott's got, yeah, look at that. He's got one of the .NET hats there that was made. So there
I
you go. You
can't
can
pull
see it.
off the flat brim like Scott can.
There you go. Even got his handle on the side there. Look at that. Fantastic. I actually get web addresses stitched on the back of my hats. Nobody can see them until you actually see us in person. So I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much, panel. I really appreciate you taking some time to join us today. Friends, if you have more questions about what's going on here, there's blog posts about all the announcements that were issued over on devblogs.microsoft.com. Check out the blog post, and if you drop a comment there, some of our friends that are here as part of this panel, some of their colleagues will be able to answer your questions and get you a response, get you the help you need, pointed in the right direction so that you find docs, you get the right answer so you can plan for .NET 6 and beyond. All right. I think that's all we have. I think that's all it's going to be. Thank you so much, friends. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Microsoft Build 2021. Take care.